bluffs are great in the summertime for a walk. They're probably not as much fun in the winter when the ice is a little snow covered on the road. Here's a picture of the same property from 1998. This is a historically our photograph shot in April, and what's evident by this spot right here is that there's some site disturbance activity that's probably related to some quarrying operation. And between hearing John talk to some of the locals in that picture, yep, that site has been mined at some level. Going back in time now, May '81, the site has been logged previous to this, and you got some budding Christmas trees starting to emerge on the hillsides. Go back at one more in our timeline. The photographer in 1946 didn't have the contrast turned on real well, so it's hard to see, but it looks like the road alignment changed, and there's a lot of pasture land on that site. That's 46. And then back in 39, we've got another indication that the site's being quarried, or sand pit, or something's going on here on that road. So the site over the last 70, 80 years, it hasn't always looked the same. Here's what the site looks like now with the existing topography. The arrows show the surface water drainage as the site moves off-site. And why I'm going through this is part of the NR 135 process, where you take inventory of what's on the property, what's on the site. And that all goes in to the county office for their review. Another thing that we have to do is we have to do a cultural resources assessment, where we look for archaeologically significant or other cultural historical findings on the site. We've done that, and there are no known discoveries of that. This figure right here shows the groundwater elevation, and that little red box is the site, and it shows that the property is probably on a divide, and that ridge that you were talking about, what was that, Wharfin Ridge? Yeah, well that ridge then probably is a indicator that groundwater is flowing to the north and west, as well as the south and east. Part of that inventory of the natural resources, here's the area wetlands. There are no mapped or identified wetlands on the property. There are some near the property boundary to the north. So then we get into the quantification of the resource, or the physical, what's underneath the ground. We did that through a series of drillings and borings on the property, and there's a typical picture of what we find there. That is that nice rounded grains of uniform size, reasonably large. The chart up there, which I know is hard to see, speaks to the distribution of size within the sample. And what's somewhat unique about this site is that there are a large number, or a large quantity, of reasonably large grain sand in that near surface Waniwak formation. And what that's very desirable for using this material as a proppant. It's got the right size, it's got the right strength, and there's hardly any waste material within that formation. Again, part of the inventory of the property here are the quarter-mile neighbors that are identified. I'm sure many or all of you are probably here, and you can identify exactly where your home is. This picture then speaks to our mine phasing, and like Greg and John both said, out of the 152 acres, the part of the property that will be used in total is about 60 acres. And at any one time, only one phase of the mine will be opened up. And this is, when I say mine, it's a pit operation, it's a quarry operation. It's not intended to be a big scoured excavation into the ground, basically nibbling off the hillside. and doing that in a very isolated manner to only harvest that very best sand. Now that Waniwak formation is thick and deep, but we have elected to only take a thinner veneer of that material out of there.
How much will you take?
Well, you can ask that in a question, and it's coming up. So each one of these phases, and it starts by that purple box. That's the first phase, and that's about 5 acres there. And that takes that hillside down. That's the first mine area. And then we proceed to the north, and that's basically lowering the ridge top. And like I said, each one of those areas is about 5, 6, 7, 8 acres. They're all laid out there. Each one of those phases is about 1 year of production. And when I say about, the reason it's 1 year about is because it's going to depend on market demand and other logistics as they develop buyers for this. But the intent is to have this entire operation completed in 7 to 10 years. And this fits with their desire to build into the reclamation and the landscape something that they can see and touch in short order and take advantage of it after they've harvested that sand resource. So you go back, Don. A couple things I wanted to point out here. This black feature, which is hard to see there, is what we would call a topsoil bank. And as we develop the site, we'll remove the topsoil and store that. And as we move to the second phase, we'll remove that topsoil and use that topsoil from the second phase to start reclamation on the first phase. So as we continue to work through the phase, then that topsoil berm then is used to reseed and restart the final phase. So it's kind of a checker hopscotch effect where we always have the material to work on the reclamation as we're phasing or excavating the next mine phase. And so in the operation, as you get into the second phase, you're mining the second phase concurrently with the restoration of the first phase. And that sequence continues through the whole life of the operation. In terms of your question on how much, this chart talks about the acres of each phase to be mined. The total acres is 61.7. The smallest phase looks to be about 3.7. The largest is 8.1. There's a total of 4.6 million tons that would be removed over the life of this project. Also of note, some of the later phases don't just include a ridge cut, but use a feature that we call a contour mine, where we're only taking the side slope and kind of pushing that back in. And the reclamation concept of that, which we'll talk about later, creates a real natural kind of a hillside trail. It is a rare ecological feature and can add a lot to the landscape. So moving right along, key differences with this site compared to a Uniman, a Badger, even a Coulee Frac. First, this is only a dig and haul. This is no different than any other aggregate mine or sand pit or road-based mine. The only differences here is the sand is a little bit rounder and a little bit harder because that's the way it is laid down. Another key difference, this is a small site. This is 150 acres. It's not a 1,200 acre site. It doesn't have a 30-year life. So it's a short-term project, 7 to 10 years. It's not continuing on for generations. John and I have visited the Babbitt mine up in northern Minnesota. They're doing a reclamation plan that's 50 years out. This is nowhere near like this. This is, in measurable real time. And the final big difference is the reclamation plan is phased and considers a natural ecological setting consistent with the owner's requirements to restore the land to the best we can and get its maximum value for the future. Now, they could spend a lot less on their reclamation. It is certainly within the requirements that you have a ryegrass and prairie seeded